"Hey, taxi." Malik's voice cut through the drizzle as he stepped off the curb, arm high, palm open. The yellow cab slowed, headlights spilling across his chest. For a brief moment, their eyes locked, driver and passenger, to strangers. Bound by the simplest of exchanges, the car swerved away without a word. Water splashed over Malik's shoes, cold biting through the leather. He stood there, arms still raised, disbelief anchoring him to the spot. Did he just... His voice trailed off, almost as if saying it aloud would confirm the insult he'd rather deny. Amara's breath puffed in the night air. Yeah, he did. The street was alive, horns in the distance, muffled laughter from a bar across the road, but Malik felt the noise fade. All that remained was the hollow sound of tires on wet asphalt, carrying away what should have been an ordinary ride home. It wasn't new, not to him. But tonight, and the night they were supposed to be celebrating something about it, stung sharper. Another cab approached. Malik stepped forward, hopeful despite himself. The driver's gaze swept over him, flickered with some unreadable thought. Then the car veered off like the first. 2 in a row, Amara muttered, half to herself. Malik swallowed hard, forcing his hands into his pockets, trying not to let the night take the dignity they had left. Minutes passed. The rain picked up, soaking Malik's collar, dripping from Amara's hair. Their laughter from dinner felt like it belonged to a different lifetime. "This is ridiculous," she said, shivering. "We've been out here, 15 minutes? "Closer to 20, Malik replied, eyes scanning the street for any glint of a rooftop light. His voice was steady, but inside he could feel irritation tightening like a fist in his chest. Pair of taxis sped by without so much as slowing. The wet air clung to their skin, the chill slipping past layers of fabric. It wasn't just the weather pressing in, it was the weight of being invisible in plain sight. Every passing minute made it harder to pretend this was just bad luck. Another cab rounded the corner. Malik stepped forward, his hand out, his body angled into the lane just enough to make his presence undeniable. The driver slowed, really slowed. Their eyes met through the glass. The man behind the wheel had a faint, knowing smirker look that said more than words ever could. Then, with a flick of his wrist on the wheel, he accelerated. Malik spun around just in time to see the same cab ease to a stop a few yards away. A white couple climbed in, the man giving Malik a quick glance before shutting the door. Amara exhaled, sharply. "You saw that, right?" "Tell me, you're not imagining it," Malik said, his jaw tight. The cab's taillights disappeared into the distance, but the smirk lingered, etched into Malik's mind like a brand. He became aware of the crowd. A man leaned against a lamppost, phone in hand, pretending to scroll, but watching. 2 women whispered to each other, their eyes darting toward Malik and Amara before quickly looking away. Someone chuckled under their breath, the sound sharp and cutting. Every reaction, or lack of it, was a reminder. This wasn't just between him and a driver. This was happening on a stage, with strangers as unwilling or amused spectators. Amara crossed her arms. "They all see it." "Yeah," Malik said quietly, "and most won't say a thing." The air between them felt heavier than the rain. Malik's fists flexed inside his pockets, nails digging into his palms. The urge to shout, to demand an explanation, pressed against his throat. But he didn't give them, that didn't give the crowd or the drivers the satisfaction. Instead, he leaned closer to Amara, his voice barely above the rain. "This isn't over." Her eyes searched his face, reading the storm gathering there. "What are you going to do?" "Not here," he said, gaze fixed down the street. But they're gonna hear about it. All of them. The rain didn't let up, but Malik stood taller, holding on to the only thing the night couldn't take, his resolve. And somewhere in the distance, another pair of headlights began to approach. Keep your head up, Malik, but not too high. His mother's voice still lived in his memory, steady but edged with the kind of caution born from experience. Growing up in Atlanta, Malik learned those unspoken rules early. Don't run in certain neighborhoods, even if you're late. Speak clearly, but never with too much attitude. Smile at strangers, but only enough to seem safe. His mother worked double shifts at the diner, hands always smelling faintly of coffee and fried chicken, just to keep him clothed and in school. Yet, she never let him forget the reality beneath. Her love, it's not fair, he once said after watching a store clerk shadow her down an aisle. She just sighed. It's not fair. It's about making it home at the end of the day. Those words didn't just shape him, they armed him by the time Malik crossed the stage in his cap and gown. His mother's hands were trembling, half from pride, half from the weight finally lifting. He was the first in his family to graduate. College, a tech degree clutched like a passport to a better life. Landing a job at a rising software firm wasn't just his win. It was proof that all those years of quiet sacrifice meant something. Still, he felt the unspoken pressure. Every meeting, every project, every handshake carried the silent responsibility of representation. Success wasn't just for Hemet, was for everyone who'd been told they couldn't. Amara's presence was magnetic, though she never tried to be. As an art curator, she had a way of making forgotten voices feel heard again. Her gallery walls told stories of resistance, beauty, and the kind of truth that made people shift uncomfortably in their seats. She didn't just talk about social justice, she lived it. Malik first saw her during a panel on representation in the arts. She challenged a well-known critic so directly, yet so gracefully, that the entire room fell silent. I like the way you see the world, Malik told her later. She smiled. I just refuse to see it the way they want me to. It was that conviction that drew him in. Their connection grew quietly, like a steady fire that didn't need to roar to stay warm. Dates weren't just dinners, they were strategy sessions for surviving a world that often saw them as less. Some days, it was little things: a cashier who skipped over them in line, a neighbor who never quite met their eyes. Other days, it was headlines that felt like personal warnings. Amara would say, "We'll make our own space," and Malik believed her. They dreamed of a future where the walls around them were built from choice, not defense. Love didn't shield them from the world's weight, but it gave them somewhere to set it down. New York promised opportunity, and they chased it with everything. They had Malik's promotion brought them here, and Amara's new gallery space was everything she'd worked for. But the city had its own rules, ones they didn't see until they were already tangled in them. Landlords who suddenly lost applications, taxi drivers who slowed, then sped past, invitations to networking events that mysteriously never arrived. It was death by 1,000 cuts, each one small enough to dismiss, yet deep enough to bleed still. Malik told himself they could endure it, until the night when a simple cab ride would strip away that belief. "Did you see that?" Amara's voice was sharp but quiet, her eyes flicking toward the end of the aisle. Malik glanced over his shoulder. The store clerk was organizing the same row of cereal boxes for the third time, her gaze never leaving. "Them, she's just doing her job," Malik muttered, though his jaw tightened. "Really?" Amara's tone carried a weight that made denial harder. Then why hasn't she touched a single shelf unless we're standing near it? They moved toward the freezer section, and like clockwork, the clerk drifted after them, pretending to check prices. It wasn't new. Back home in Atlanta, Malik had learned how easily suspicion clung to him in spaces like this. But tonight was supposed to be different tonight for celebration. Not quiet accusations wrapped in fake smiles. He told himself it didn't matter, but the knot in his chest said otherwise. The restaurant hostess smiled politely when Malik gave his name, but her eyes barely met his. Right this way. She led them past softly lit tables with views of the city, stopping near the kitchen doors where waiters rushed in and out. Actually, Malik said, keeping his tone friendly, we had a reservation. Could we get something a little? Sorry, we're full, she interrupted, already placing menus on the table. Minutes later, they watched another couple white, no reservation, guided to a spot with candlelight and skyline views. Amara's hand brushed his. She didn't speak, but he felt the message in her silence. The same one from the store. This wasn't a coincidence. Earlier that evening, Malik had booked a ride-hailing service to get them to the restaurant. The driver accepted. Profile picture loaded. Estimated time for minutes. Then, without warning, cancelled. Another driver appeared. 2 minutes away. Cancelled. The third didn't even make it down. The street before, the same thing happened. Malik stared at his phone, jaw flexing. He didn't need anyone to explain. This keeps happening, he told Amara when she asked. Same thing last month. Sometimes they don't even bother hiding. Why? She looked at him, searching his face for a hint that he was wrong. But deep down, they both knew better. When the fourth driver finally came, Malik kept his smile for Amara's sake, but it felt like pretending. Over dinner, Malik tried to brush it all aside. It's nothing, he said, swirling his glass. Just bad luck. Amara leaned back, her expression calm but unreadable. 3 things in one night. And we're supposed to believe that. He chuckled softly, but it didn't reach his eyes. We're here now. Let's just enjoy it. She nodded slowly, yet he could see the unease creeping in. They both wanted the night to feel normal, but normal had been slipping away since the first aisle in that store, and with every moment, it was getting harder to pretend otherwise. Later, standing at the curb, they spotted a yellow cab rolling toward them. Malik raised his hand. The driver's eyes met his then. The car kept moving. A few minutes later, the same cab passed again, slowed, looked, drive on. Amara's voice was tight. That's the 3rd time he's done that. Malik tried to laugh it off, but his smile faltered as the cab stopped a block away for a young white couple. The couple didn't even glance. Their way it wasn't just rejection, it was a reminder, one that wrapped around Malik's chest like a vice, pressing harder with each repetition. By the time they reached the corner, Malik could feel his composure breaking. It wasn't just tonight. It was every moment like this he'd swallowed for years. The clerk's stare, the worst table, the vanishing rides, the circling cab. They stacked in his mind like bricks, each one heavier than the last. He told himself to keep calm, to be the man who doesn't let it show. But the anger wasn't leaving this time. It was growing roots, and he wasn't sure he wanted to pull them out. Finally, a cab. Malik's voice carried relief as the yellow sedan slowed to the curb. He stepped forward, arm raised, locking eyes with the driver. The man's gaze flickered, his hand twitching toward the door handle. Malik could already feel the tension in his shoulders loosening. Then the driver's lips moved to clipped words, off duty. The meter glowed green. Malik froze. What? The man shook his head, eyes darting anywhere but Malik's face. Off duty, he repeated, as if the second time made it believable. Amara's expression hardened beside him. He's clearly not. The cab rolled forward, easing away from the curb. Malik's pulse quickened, not from surprise. He'd seen this game before, but from the sting of thinking, even for a second, that tonight might be different. His hands stayed half-raised in the air, caught between a wave and a defense. The streetlight overhead hummed. A horn blared somewhere behind him, and the car kept going. Malik turned, ready to push the moment aside, when he saw the cab stop 30 feet ahead. A white man in a navy blazer stepped off the sidewalk. The driver leaned across the seat, popped the door open, and greeted him with a grin Malik hadn't been offered. The meter still glowed green. Malik felt heat rush to his face, not just from anger, but from the gut punch of knowing he'd been dismissed on sight. Amara saw it too. Her hand gripped his arm. He didn't even try to hide it. The blazer man slid into the back seat without hesitation. The driver looked up, eyes locking with Malik's in the rearview mirror, before pulling away like nothing had happened. For a second, Malik thought about chasing after the car. Not to ride, just to force the man to see what he'd done. But the moment passed, and the distance between them stretched like an insult left hanging in the air, out of the corner of his eye. Malik caught it, the tiny red glow of a recording. Light. A stranger stood a few feet away, phone raised, filming the whole thing. Every muscle in Malik's body tensed. It wasn't just the driver now, it was the fact that his humiliation had an audience. He could already imagine the captions. Another racist cabbie in NYC. Or worse, comments, picking apart his tone, his stance, his reaction. "Hey man," the filmer said, "that was messed up. You want me to post it?" Malik didn't answer. His jaw was tight, his stomach twisting. It wasn't about going viral, it was about feeling like his dignity had just been turned into someone else's content. The camera stayed up. The red light kept blinking. "Hey," Malik's voice cut through the traffic noise. He stepped into the street, waving his arms as the cab slowed at a red light. The driver rolled his window halfway down, his smirk already in place. "You had your light on," Malik said, steady but firm. "Why'd you pass me?" The man shrugged. "Not my kind of fare." Malik's stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" The driver leaned closer, his voice low but laced with venom. "Means I don't take fares that cause trouble." His eyes flicked briefly toward Malik's skin before he eased back in his seat. It was subtle enough to deny, sharp enough to slice. Malik's breath quickened. "You know exactly what you just said." The man chuckled, the sound dripping with dismissal. "Call someone else, buddy." The light turned green. The cab eased forward, but Malik wasn't done. "Say it again?" He shouted after the car, the words echoing off the glass storefronts. The driver didn't look back, but Malik knew he'd been heard. Before Malik could move, Amara stepped into the street, her voice shaking but fierce. "You think you can treat people like this and just drive off?" She yelled, her words chasing the cab as it accelerated. The driver didn't so much as glance in the mirror. Her hands trembled at her sides. "It's not just tonight," she said, turning to Malik. "It's every time someone like him decides they get to decide our worth." Malik searched her face. The anger there wasn't just for him, it was for every insult she'd swallowed. Alongside him, the cab disappeared into the blur of traffic, leaving only the faint smell of exhaust and the sound of her breathing. By then, the sidewalk had turned into a half-circle of strangers. Some still held their phones high, eager for a clip to share. Others called out, "Let it go, man, or it's not worth it," as if they got to set the rules for his reaction. A few shook their heads, muttering under their breath, "Happens all the time." Each word felt like another verdict. Not one person suggested holding the driver accountable. Not one asked if they were okay. The crowd's attention flickered like a light switching for the drama. Off for the people living it. Malik stood there, still hearing the driver's voice in his head. He thought about the promotion he'd earned last week, the pride that had carried him through the evening. It felt smaller now, buried under the weight of a stranger's casual dismissal. Amara's hand rested lightly on his arm. He wanted to say something to her, to himself, but the words didn't come. Only the echo of tires fading into the night remained, and with it, the hollow space the cab had left behind. "You too need a ride." Malik turned toward the voice, caught off guard. A black SUV had rolled to a smooth stop. Its door swinging open, Beyoncé stepped out like she belonged in every space she entered, because she did. Her gaze swept the tense cluster of people, lingering just long enough on Malik and Amara to take in the sharp edges of the moment. Malik blinked, unsure if his exhaustion was playing tricks on him. Amara's breath caught. "Is this?" Beyoncé didn't wait for them to finish. "I saw what happened." Her tone wasn't casual. It carried a weight that told Malik she had already chosen a side. The crowd shifted, some pulling out phones, some whispering her name like they'd just been handed front row tickets to a live performance they didn't deserve. Malik glanced at Amara. Her earlier rage had frozen into something else, anticipation. Beyoncé's eyes flicked toward the cab still idling across the street. "Come on, let's fix this." The drizzle hadn't let up, but somehow Beyoncé's presence cut through it like sunlight. Every bystander's focus snapped to her. Conversations died mid-sentence. The cabbie, still leaning against his steering wheel, straightened instinctively when he saw her. She started walking toward him, not rushing, not hesitating. Each step pulled more attention away from Malik and Amara's humiliation and toward the unfolding shift in control. Malik could feel the difference. A moment ago, the crowd was there to watch them lose. Now, eyes followed the woman who could turn the tide. The driver's smirk faltered as she closed the distance. He wasn't used to being studied like prey. Malik didn't know exactly what she was about to do, but he knew she wasn't here for small gestures. Beyoncé stopped, just short of the curb, and glanced back. "Tell me what he did." Amara didn't hesitate. Her voice was low at first, but each word built strength. "We flagged him down. He looked right at us, said he was off duty, and drove away. 30 seconds later, he picked up someone else. Didn't even pretend it wasn't about us." Beyoncé's brow tightened, not exaggerated, just enough to show she'd heard the truth before. "And that someone else, white guy, business jacket, didn't even have to wave," Amara said, her voice steady now. "He just got the ride." Malik watched Beyoncé absorb the words without asking for proof. "She didn't need it, all right," she said finally, her voice like a door clicking shut. "Let's give him a choice he can't squirm out of." Beyoncé stepped forward and raised a hand, calling to the cabbie like any other passenger. His eyes lit up. The engine hummed back to life. He steered toward her, wearing the same easy grin he'd denied Malik minutes earlier. "Evening," he said, pulling alongside. "Where to?" She smiled, matching his charm beat for beat. "Just a quick trip uptown." The driver nodded, glancing at the empty back seat like he'd already claimed a prize. "Hop in." She didn't move. "Actually," she said, tilting her head, "I've got friends with me." His grin didn't waver. "Sure, bring them." She glanced over her shoulder, meeting Malik's eyes. The unspoken message was clear. This wasn't just a ride, it was a setup. Malik and Amara stepped forward. The driver's expression barely flickered, but Malik caught the momentary hitch in his breath. Beyoncé took a step back, clearing the way. "They're with me." The cabbie's jaw tightened as Malik reached the curb. "You said you were off duty," Malik reminded him, his voice calm but unshakable. The driver's eyes darted between Malik, Amara, and Beyoncé. "I am used to have just turned the light back on." "That's not what happened," Beyoncé said softly, but there was nothing gentle about her tone. The crowd edged closer, phones angled high. Malik didn't have to raise his voice. The silence was doing it for him. "You could have just admitted it," he said. The driver opened his mouth, but no words came. Beyoncé leaned slightly toward the open window. "Looks like you've got an audience. Might want to think carefully about what you say next." The cabbie's hands tightened around the steering wheel. A ripple moved through the bystanders' gasps. Murmurs, the rapid clicks of phone cameras. Someone whispered she caught him red-handed. The driver's confidence melted, his earlier smugness replaced by something brittle. "Man's busted," another voice said, louder this time. The energy shifted. Malik could feel it, not just attention, but support. The same people who'd stood back before now leaned in, hungry to see how far the driver would fall. Beyoncé stepped, close enough that only Malik could hear. "Let's make sure everyone hears about this," she murmured. It wasn't a suggestion. Malik felt something stir in his chest, a spark he hadn't had since the night began. He gave a single nod. "Yeah, let's." Malik straightened, shoulders squared, no longer shrinking beneath the driver's gaze. This time, when the crowd looked at him, it wasn't pity that carried it, was recognition. The driver's grip on the wheel had gone white-knuckled. His control over the moment was gone, stripped by his own choices. Malik didn't need to raise his voice. The silence said everything. Beyoncé's slight smile told him. They'd already won the first round, and for the first time that night, Malik believed the fight wasn't over, was just beginning. "Bro, check your phone, you're everywhere." Malik's eyes cracked open to a screen glowing with dozens of notifications. Texts, missed calls, mentions from people he hadn't spoken to in years. He opened one link, and there it was, the cab incident. Millions of views, thousands of comments. Hashtag Cabbiegate splashed across every repost. Clips showed Beyoncé stepping aside, his voice calling out the driver, the crowd filming every second. Malik scrolled through replies. "This is why we speak up. This can't keep happening. Proud of you, man." His chest tightened, not with fear this time, but something stronger. Amara's call came through next. "Told you it wouldn't just disappear." By midday, a statement from the cab company spread across social media. "We are aware of the recent viral video involving one of our drivers. We apologize to the individuals affected and the community at large. The driver has been suspended pending investigation. We will be reviewing our diversity and bias training immediately." Malik read it twice. It sounded polished, safe, like they were protecting the brand, not fixing the problem. They're just covering themselves, Amara said over the phone. But at least now they can't pretend it didn't happen. Malik exhaled slowly. Then we keep pushing. By the next morning, the story had moved from feeds to news desks. Anchors dissected the footage on live TV. Some praised the public outcry. Others tried to downplay it as a misunderstanding. But the conversation kept circling back to the same point. Racism in public transportation wasn't rare. Local activists shared their own experiences, sparking calls for policy changes. City officials were suddenly open to discussions. Malik watched one segment in silence. Every time the clip replayed, he could see the driver's expression shift from smug to cornered. This isn't just about him anymore, Malik muttered to himself. It's about everyone who's been turned away before we ever spoke up. A week later, Malik sat under studio lights on a local morning show. The host leaned forward. Why speak out now? Because it's never just one driver, Malik replied. It's a system that lets bias slide as long as it's convenient. And every time we stay silent, it gets stronger. The interviewer nodded, inviting him to continue. This isn't just about me and Amara, Malik said. It's about making sure the next person isn't standing in the rain, wondering if they're invisible. Social media lit up again. Clips of his words spreading with the same momentum as the original video. For the first time, Malik felt like the message was louder than the incident itself. Weeks later, Malik and Amara walked side by side down the same busy streets that once felt hostile. People still stared, some with recognition, some with curiosity, but the weight of those looks didn't press down anymore. A man in passing gave Malik a subtle nod, as if to say, I saw what you did. Amara glanced at him. Feels different now, doesn't it? Malik smiled faintly. Yeah, it does. They didn't pretend the city had changed overnight, but they had. As they reached the corner, Malik paused. That night, he said quietly, it wasn't about getting in that cab. Amara tilted her head. Then what was it about? He met her eyes, reclaiming what they tried to take from us. Being seen, being heard. She squeezed his hand, and we were. Malik's voice steadied. You've seen what happened to us, but this isn't just my story. It's ours. How many times has something like this happened to you, your family, your friends? Think about it. Then ask why. Is it still happening? He leaned forward slightly. Tell me in the comments. Every single one will be read, because your experiences matter. They're proof we're not alone, and they deserve to be heard. And if you believe in this fight, Malik added, don't let it stop here. Like, subscribe, and share this video. Let's make sure this conversation reaches every street, every city.